Hey y'all, and welcome back to Confederate Shop's YouTube channel. This morning, it's morning here in Virginia, I'm going to talk about Abraham Lincoln. Now, I talk about Lincoln a lot for a variety of reasons, mostly pertaining to the war between the states and some of the things that he committed. But this is going to be more of a relaxed video, just me telling you a few things, telling you a few of my thoughts when it comes to the great emancipator and maybe some things that you weren't aware of. So if you're new here and you don't know anything about Abraham Lincoln, I am going to fill you in with the Southern perspective of Lincoln, or really the truth about Lincoln, which is coming out more and more, which is why I'm making this video. I saw recently a couple headlines that Abraham Lincoln could be a homosexual. Now, I don't care what his sexual preferences were, but I think this is important. They're making a documentary about it, claiming that it's true. I always thought it was a conspiracy, so I never put any salt to that notion that he might have been a homosexual. But I think it's important because people are going to really re-examine Lincoln. They're starting to find out that maybe he wasn't the man they thought he was. And let me tell you, truthfully, regardless of that allegation, if it's true or not, there are things about Abraham Lincoln that you wouldn't believe, that they don't tell you in your history books, that modern academia will conveniently avoid. Now, like I said, if you're new here, I'll fill you in. Probably the biggest thing about Abraham Lincoln is this notion that he was, the great emancipator. We know that that's a lie, but that he was all for equity. This idea that all men were created equal. Now, Lincoln, if anything, his track record shows clearly that that is not the truth. We know in 1858 that he held to the racial beliefs of white superiority. Now, you can look this up. It's the Lincoln-Douglas debates, fourth debate, part 1, that took place on September 18th, 1858, where he said literally that he doesn't believe that Negroes should be jurors, that they should hold office, that they should be able to vote or intermarry with white people, that he believes, and I'm paraphrasing, that whites were superior, that held a superior position. Now, to my critics who might say, well, he changed his mind just a few years later or morphed into this a better man by the end of the war between the states. I say that's false too, because just a few months up until Lincoln's death and in his assassination, he was still talking about deporting all of the free blacks back to Africa. He was always a proponent of that. He always thought it was a good idea. Up until his death, he chose to do that. Now, there's other documents, too, that actually show Abraham Lincoln was a slave owner. Now, I know you might think that that idea is absolutely preposterous, but his wife, Mary Todd, actually inherited quite a few slaves back in, I believe it was 1849. Now, Lincoln, because he was the head of his household, had took ownership of those slaves, and he was the executor of that part of his household when he inherited those slaves. And most people might suspect, well, Lincoln, he probably set them free. He never liked slavery, right? He just set them free and they lived happy lives. No, he didn't do that. In the court case, he had the officials sell the slaves back into slavery, and he profited off their sale. Now, more recent evidence has come out to prove that. Piece of evidence that I believe the author of the book, and I can't recall the book right now, I think it's called Lincoln's in the White House. He had actually found the document from that court case with a letter with Lincoln's name on it, and it was hidden away in an Illinois library in a dusty old box, and he found this thing and wrote an entire book about it, so it is a true allegation. That's one thing you might not have known about Abraham Lincoln. Another thing that really gets a lot of attention is the Emancipation Proclamation, right? He's called the Great Emancipator for a reason, but people don't understand that the Great Emancipation, the Great Emancipation didn't free a single slave. That's right. When he gave that proclamation, it only applied to slaves in the South and Southern territories. It did not apply to slaves in any northern occupied territories or northern states that were still within the Union, right? There were plenty of states that were still remained in the Union that had slaves or slavery, the institution of slavery. That's another important, interesting fact, too. Slavery didn't end in this nation until 1866. And even after that, some of the dealings with places like New Jersey was somewhat shady with how they said they did away with slavery, but it still kind of existed. That's a subject for another time. But another thing about Lincoln, too, that you might not have known are all of his wartime deeds. One of those things that I find very, very telling is that Abraham Lincoln, when he started war, because he did start the war, never met with Congress. This is one thing that I just could never get over. You know, when the incident at Pearl Harbor happened in Hawaii, that whole ordeal, what got America into war with Japan in World War II, the President of the United States was meeting with Congress within 48 hours of it happening. Okay, when something major happens that could cause a wartime conflict, the president is there talking to Congress, trying to get them to, let's declare war. Lincoln didn't do that. He didn't meet with Congress until 3 months after the Fort Sumter incident, meaning he started war all on his own. I think this is one of the major reasons why he lost all of the border states, because not all these southern states had seceded yet after the Fort Sumter incident, right? Virginia was one of those states that still remained in the Union, but Lincoln called for her to provide troops for his invasion, and Virginia was like, wait a second, you just declared war on your own. You want to invade other sovereign states. We're not going to do that. We're going to join the Confederacy, right? And after that, many of the other states joined the Confederacy as well. But folks, these are just a few of the things about Abraham Lincoln that you may have never heard of. And Lincoln is a very misunderstood character. I could probably talk a very long video on this subject, but if you want to know more, you want to know the truth about Lincoln, then you need to get one of our books out of our library. I've got quite a few. Lincoln as He Really Was is a great one. The Real Lincoln by Thomas D. Lorenzo, also Lincoln Unmasked by Thomas D. Lorenzo. And one book I really like, and I featured this in my video series before, is a historical reprint by Lamon. Now, Lamon was Lincoln's friend, spent a lot of time with him before he became president, and Lamon actually became the U.S. Marshal to the District of Columbia during the war. Now, Lamon wrote a book about Lincoln that came out after his death, and prior to Lincoln's death, Lamon was a very, very popular man. He was universally loved by most Northerners just as much as Abraham Lincoln because he was Lincoln's friend. But the book is actually a biography of his friend Lincoln and tells the truth about Lincoln and some of the things that he was guilty of. One thing that really jumps out at me in that book is chapter 16, because it talks about Lincoln's Christianity. Now, maybe to some viewers, this is of no consequence to you. You don't care about Lincoln's religious beliefs. I do, because I grew up in a evangelical Protestant church, and evangelicals universally love, for the most part, they universally love Abraham Lincoln. I mean, Lincoln is like the next thing to George Washington and Jesus. And so he's always looked at as this great purveyor of Christianity and just always was spreading Christian principles and Christian love. And Lincoln was just this great Christian man. That's not the truth. Lamon shows that Lincoln and tells accounts of Lincoln mocking God, and many times wasn't devout anything except to maybe sway his audience, his political audience, in the area that he was. He used Christianity when it was convenient for him politically in order to gain power. Now, you can disagree with me, or you could get the book by Lamon, and it's a historical reprint. I'm kind of going down a rabbit trail here, getting long-winded talking about these things. But his book is called A Life of Abraham Lincoln by Henry Ward Lamon. So get yourself a copy of that. Like I said, I've got many, many books on Abraham Lincoln, And I think it's interesting that people are starting to talk about things about Lincoln that they never knew. You know, do we really know the Lincoln that we were told of as a kid when you were younger, right? We've all heard that narrative. So I hope you enjoy this video. Thank you so much for supporting my work here, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.